All right, guys, I wanted to talk about this. I had to bring this up. I had to talk about this because, look, if you watch my channel, if you've watched me, if you've listened to anything that I've said over the past 2 years, I can't believe it's been 2 years since that show's come out. You know that I have a strong disliking of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. I think it is a disgrace. I think that they've totally screwed up anything that it was such a simple concept and they just ruined it. They truly ruined something that could have been so simple. But this YouTube channel, Bullets and Blockbusters, they somehow, maybe, I don't know where they got this, they posted the original plans for the Obi-Wan Kenobi trilogy. But I want to give my reaction to it because it is really, really interesting, okay? I want to talk about some of these things and give my honest opinion about what could have been. All right, we do know that back in 2012, shortly after Disney acquired Lucasfilm, there were a lot of plans for some movies. Not only were we going to get the sequel trilogy, but they talked about, there's going to be like a Jabba the Hutt movie. There was going to be Solo. There was going to be Rogue One. And there was even plans for an Obi-Wan Kenobi trilogy. So here, let's just get into it.
Prior to Obi-Wan premiering on Disney+, most fans assumed a movie or a series about the aging Jedi Knight would have taken place solely on Tatooine, with Obi-Wan watching over a young Luke Skywalker from a distance. However, when writer Stuart Beattie was asked to pitch his take on an Obi-Wan film to Lucasfilm, he theorized that Obi-Wan must have left Tatooine at some point during those 19 years living on the desert planet.
You have to have him leave. But there has to be a good reason why he leaves. You have to have a reason that he's willing to leave Luke alone to a certain point. Is he leaving him alone? Is he leaving somebody there to watch him? But let's see.
And not only that, Kenobi must have at least had a conversation with Darth Vader. At first, Lucasfilm pushed back, saying that neither of those things could happen. However, Beattie insisted that they must have happened, pointing to a line in Return of the Jedi that alluded to it. And it's the scene where Luke surrenders to Vader and tells his father that he knows there's good in him. Later in the scene, Vader remarks that Obi-Wan once thought as you do. Beattie would point out
here's the crazy thing is that was rumored all the way back in like 2016, 2017, that they were going to utilize that part, that line, as a reason to make this trilogy. Look, I was somebody who sat there and said, you don't have to have a Vader Obi-Wan meet up in an Obi-Wan trilogy or story. I understand why there's a desire to do it. You don't have to do it. But they wanted to use that line. And I became one of those people who would defend the idea of having them. I was against it at first, but I was like, look, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And yeah, sure, let's take that line and say, okay, makes sense. Obi-Wan once thought as you do.
Revenge of the Sith, do we see Obi-Wan feeling that way about Anakin? For example, not only does he tell Anakin during their duel that he is lost as they debate whether the Jedi are evil, but after Obi-Wan cuts him in half, he's lost to die. So Beattie argued that there must have been a point where they met again between Revenge of the Sith and New Hope, where Obi-Wan becomes convinced that good still exists somewhere in Vader, and potentially even tries to save him. After laying out his case, Beattie would impress Lucasfilm enough to win the job. Beattie would go on to write the script for the Obi-Wan Kenobi feature film, which was imagined as the first in a planned trilogy, as Beattie felt there were 3 different evolutions that the character has to make in order to go from Obi-Wan to Ben. The first evolution ended up being explored in the show, which was surrender your will to the Force and leave the kid alone. But in the movie, the events that would have led Kenobi to get to this realization would have happened completely differently. The film would have opened with Vader taking on 5 Jedi and killing them all.
You can have Vader do some crazy things in this show or in this movie, and they just didn't go with it. They just didn't go with it.
For them in capturing them, but Vader would have been the one who kills them, almost like an executioner. Beattie's film also wouldn't have included the Inquisitors like the Grand Inquisitor or the Fifth Brother. Instead, Reva would have led a squad of 10 stormtrooper marshals,
so much better.
Jet,
First off, one of my biggest complaints was the use of the Inquisitors. You didn't need to have the Inquisitors here. Having one Inquisitor, Reva, would have been fine. But not making the show should not have been about Reva. Okay, they should not have made this show about Reva. It should have been called Reva featuring Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. That's kind of what the show became. Yet here we sit. They could have made this show Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then Reva could have been this badass Inquisitor
clone troopers and veterans of the Clone Wars, still with their biochips in them, and all would have been played by Tamura Morrison. And while they all would have been absolutely ruthless and not miss when they shot, unlike the stormtroopers from the original trilogy, whose poor aim has become a running gag over the years, each one still would have ended up dying over the course of the movie. Beatty chose not to include the Grand Inquisitor because the character appears later in Star Wars Rebels, so he felt audiences would know that the character wouldn't die, taking away some of the jeopardy from the story. This is why Beatty created the character of Reva, so audiences wouldn't know whether the character survives or not, and also for Obi-Wan to have a foe he could defeat, save, or potentially kill, since he couldn't do that with Vader. However,
it completely makes sense, because you can't kill Vader, so you make a villain that can be killed, or you, even if you don't want to kill the character, the audience doesn't know, can she or he be killed? Maybe Obi-Wan does kill her, maybe not. Like, come on.
Beatty's version of Reva was dramatically different from the one in the show. In the movie,
because the one in the show
sucked.
sucked.
Darth Vader was Anakin. It would have been Kenobi who told her, which would have made her go from a villain to realizing that the guy she works for, Darth Vader, is the one who massacred the Jedi.
Okay, first off, I liked, the one aspect of the show I did like is that Obi-Wan didn't know immediately that Vader was Anakin. Not that Vader was Anakin, but that Vader was still around. In my opinion, I always thought, like, if Obi-Wan, like, detached himself from the Force completely, he wouldn't feel Vader out there. He wouldn't feel that Anakin and Vader are still out there. So when the Inquisitors come and he's faced with the Inquisitors, he starts hearing about Vader, and he would not believe it. And I think it would be great if he would hear Vader but not believe that it's Anakin, and he wouldn't believe that Anakin is still Vader until he comes face to face with Vader. That, I think, would have been a very big and impactful moment in the show. And then, yes, absolutely, him being the one that tells Reva that Anakin is Vader, thus spinning her out of control because she almost died or was one of the younglings that he nearly killed in his crazy attack on the Jedi. Like, come on, that's so much better.
Killed all her friends and almost killed her.
So much better.
Her for dead. For his part, Vader would have been absolutely obsessed with finding Kenobi and getting revenge over what he did to him. Early in the film, Palpatine would have ordered Vader to travel to and crush a rebel uprising on a moon, but Vader would have pushed back, arguing that they should focus on finding Kenobi instead, calling him one of the two biggest threats in the galaxy. The Emperor then would have mockingly responded with, "Pity you didn't kill him when you had the chance," followed by Vader clapping back by reminding Palpatine that the other threat is Yoda. This would have enraged Palpatine, who tells Vader to know his place and let it go. In the Disney series, there's a moment where Obi-Wan briefly encounters a homeless clone trooper on the streets of Coruscant. However, in the movie, this would have been taken one step further, as Commander Cody would have played a major role in the story. In the Clone Wars series, it's revealed that all clone troopers were implanted with inhibitor chips, which is how Palpatine is able to initiate Order 66. By the time of the movie, Cody would have had this chip removed and been racked with guilt over his attempt to kill Kenobi. As a result, Cody would have devoted his life to right this wrong and protect Kenobi at all costs.
Like, come on. Like, you're going to sit here and tell me that somebody sat there and read this script and said, nope, no, we're not going to do, we're going to do what we did. We're going to do this. Like, come on.
First time we would have seen him in the film would have been near the beginning, when Obi-Wan goes into town. Cody would have followed him through the streets and attacked him, taking him into an alley with a knife to his throat before saying, "You're dead." From here, he'd lower the knife, as we'd realize Cody is making a point, as he tells Kenobi he has to be more careful. This scene would have been used to establish how disconnected Obi-Wan is from the Force, which is why Obi-Wan doesn't sense Cody following him, and besides not practicing it while on...
And as you see, like, my theory on him being so disconnected from the Force, not being able to sense Vader, like, I think that would have been so much better. But again, getting into this with Obi-Wan, like, oh, this is so much better.
Hiding, Kenobi is also disconnected from the Force because he's forcing his will upon Luke to be the greatest Jedi ever and fix everything in the galaxy. Beatty drew inspiration from Superman 2, which sees the Man of Steel stripped of his powers. The idea, which Beatty says was kind of done in the final Obi-Wan series, was to finally have an amazing moment at the end of the film similar to when Superman gets his powers back and crushes Zod's hand. And so by the end of the film, Obi-Wan would find his way back to the Force and surrender to the will of it by leaving Luke alone. At one point in the film, Obi-Wan would have helped a group of religious refugees invade the Empire, and this group would have worshipped a goddess that they claimed controlled all life, until Obi-Wan realizes that what they're worshipping is the Force, and the leader of this group, Tao, would have taken Obi-Wan to their sacred shrine, where he would have had a Force vision on Mustafar reminiscent of the cave scene in The Empire Strikes Back. Seeing a man in a dark robe with a lightsaber, Obi-Wan would have assumed it was Anakin, only to realize that it's actually Luke, all grown up, who attacks him.
See, this is where things start to get a little crazier. Yet, I guess they're trying to build out the story a bit more, maybe to understand Luke. This is starting to get a little further in here.
Luke almost killing Obi-Wan, before Obi-Wan snaps out of the vision and wakes up back on Tatooine. What Obi-Wan would have taken away from this vision of the future is that if he keeps trying to train Luke and put all this pressure and guilt on the kid, Luke's eventually going to turn to the dark side. Keep in mind, this appearance of a de-aged Mark Hamill as Luke would have predated his appearance on The Mandalorian. Similar to a buddy cop movie, the relationship between Obi-Wan and Cody would have...
I guess it would have been kind of cool to see Obi-Wan versus Luke. More I think about it, that actually would have been really cool, because we would have that aspect of, we would have seen Anakin versus Obi-Wan and Obi-Wan versus Luke, and the differences and the lessons that Obi-Wan would have learned. Oh, dude, now like you start to think about this and you start to understand. Stuart Beatty really understood what he was doing. He knew what he was going to be getting into. Look, I don't completely agree with his approach at first with just taking that one line from Return of the Jedi, but he understood what it meant for Obi-Wan and the fans of Obi-Wan.
Have been like an old married couple, as the two would constantly bicker all the time, but also reminisce about the good old days, saying stuff like, God, it was so much better when we had an army at our backs. Eventually, just like in the Disney Plus series, Obi-Wan would have had to leave Tatooine. Except in the movie, Obi-Wan would have asked Cody to watch over Luke. This would have given the film a fun little B story to keep cutting
that
back
makes
to
sense.
during Obi-Wan's
like, you don't just leave
adventure.
Luke.
At one point during
like
the
he
film,
did.
Cody and Owen would have discovered some bounty hunters that had discovered Obi-Wan. After killing them, they would have argued about what to do with the bodies. Eventually, they would have settled on dumping them in the Sarlacc pit. So they travel to it, and while they're tossing the bodies in, they're busy having an argument about Cody shooting Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith. While this is happening, someone else arrives with a dead alien that they also want to quietly dispose of in the pit. Basically, it would have been exactly like this bit on The Simpsons. The whole movie would have built to a confrontation between Obi-Wan and Vader that sees the two men duel on a space station as it falls apart in the atmosphere of a giant planet. During the battle, Obi-Wan would have slashed Vader's helmet, giving Anakin the scar on his forehead
cool.
and revealing his face under the mask. It's at this point that Obi-Wan realizes that there's an alternative to waiting for Luke to grow up so that he can train him to be a Jedi. Instead, Obi-Wan tries to turn Vader and bring him back to the light side so that he and Anakin can go pay a visit to Palpatine and take down the Empire once and for all. Unfortunately for Obi-Wan, he realizes that his friend is long gone and only Darth Vader remains. As they resume the duel, Vader pushes Obi-Wan off the platform they're fighting on as he disappears. As they try to...
Again, makes complete sense. The way that the battle ends in the show makes no sense. Why would he just walk away? Why would Vader just let him walk away? You finish the freaking job. Vader's there almost dead. Like, I don't care who you are. You don't just walk away from your brother for the second time. One of the most evil villains that you've ever faced. You don't just walk away from him. The only way that they can separate from their battle is what just happened here. Something happens. You get separated from the ground falling out, a ship blowing something up. That is the only way that it makes sense. Not the way it happened in the show.
To find Kenobi to see if he's dead or alive, Reva tells Vader that she killed him so that Vader would stop hunting him, leading Vader to kill her in a rage. For the second...
And again, perfect. You have Reva, who is looking for revenge, wants to get revenge on Vader for doing what he did to her friends and what he nearly did to her, and trying to hurt him, and he just kills her. It's fantastic.
Second movie, Beatty wanted to explore how Obi-Wan came to accept his eventual fate in A New Hope, as he felt Obi-Wan choosing to sacrifice himself was pretty sudden and required pre-acceptance that it was going to happen. As a result, in the second film, Obi-Wan would have either learned through a prophecy...
Now we're getting... That's all the first film? That's crazy.
Or from the ghost of Qui-Gon, of a moment in the future where he's going to have to sacrifice himself for the good. Obi-Wan would have rejected this at first, arguing that he's here to help, but the film would have explored his eventual acceptance of the idea that he needs to die willingly at a crucial moment. On top of that, Obi-Wan also would have learned from Qui-Gon how to become more powerful in death than in life as a Force ghost.
So, I mean, that's it. I mean, we know what went wrong, but I mean, that's crazy. That literally, like I said a little bit ago, the fact that somebody at Lucasfilm, that they sat there and they said, nope, this script isn't good enough. We want to get more people to write on a script, and then we're going to do something. Like, come on. And this isn't the first time that we've seen this. Duel of the Fate script is 100 times better than what we got with The Rise of Skywalker. Why does this keep happening? This is the failure of Lucasfilm under Disney. This show, this movie, this story is far better than what we got. Is it perfect? No, but it is far better than what we got. Far better. I don't know. I encourage you guys to go check out these guys. Give them a like. Give them a follow, a subscribe. They did a heck of a job. I hope this is true. I don't, maybe they made it up, but it sounds accurate. What they said in the beginning, everything lines up from the rumors that I remember hearing at the time. But give them a like. Let me know your thoughts on this. What do you think about this? Do you think it's better or worse than what we got? I think it's far better. I think this would have been a massive hit for Star Wars. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. With all that said, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you all later.